Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating: the structural framework behind Olivia Jonah's 2026 book, 31 Days of Prayer for the Nations. Now, we aren't just going to sit here and read through the text. Instead, we're going to completely unpack the architecture of this book. We want to really understand the unique philosophy behind how Jonah organizes the act of global prayer and exactly how she guides the reader through it. Right off the bat, if we look at the source material, the subtitle frames this whole thing as a journey, specifically a journey of awakening, alignment, and transformation. So at its core, Jonah isn't just presenting some simple daily devotional here. It's meticulously designed as a structured guide for intercessory prayer. It's essentially asking you, the reader, to step back and look at world events, the stuff we see happening in the news every single day, but to view it entirely through a spiritual lens. And honestly, that foundational premise is captured perfectly by this quote right from the text. There is more happening in the nations than what is visible. Jonah is essentially arguing that there is this vast unseen engine running just beneath the surface of all global events. And this unseen engine, it matters. Because according to the book, if you're only focusing on the visible outcomes, the politics, the conflicts, the shifting economies, you are literally just reacting to symptoms. To actually affect real change, she argues, you have to engage with the spiritual root causes that are driving that engine. So to really wrap our heads around this framework, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. 1, the unseen spiritual realm. 2, the call to intercession. 3, power and participation. 4, the 31-day journey. And finally, number 5, beyond the written words. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the unseen spiritual realm. This is where the author says prayer truly matters. So, before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of this framework, we kind of have to ask, where does the author believe the real action is taking place? Well, the book establishes a really sharp contrast between 2 different realms. There's the visible, the stuff we consume daily, like policies, economies, loud news headlines, public decisions. But Jonah argues that nations are actually shaped by the unseen. She describes this as a much deeper reality that is inherently spiritual in nature. And according to the text, this unseen realm is exactly where prayer matters. Think of it this way. The visible world is essentially just the output on a screen, but the unseen world? That's the control room. Moving on to Section 2, the call to intercession, or standing in the gap. Okay, so if that unseen realm really is the control room, how exactly does the author expect readers to interact with it? Jonah uses a very specific term for this interaction, and that's intercession. And the book defines it quite poetically, actually, in 3 parts: a burden, a pressing, a standing in the gap. Wow. I mean, this isn't described as some light or casual activity, right? It requires carrying a genuinely heavy emotional and spiritual weight for people and places far, far beyond yourself. And standing in the gap is such a powerful metaphor here. It implies there's a fracture, a literal distance between a nation's current state and its ideal spiritual state. And the person praying, they're actively inserting themselves into that dangerous space to hold it together. It's a very active, pressing engagement with that unseen reality. But why? Why is this heavy intercession deemed so necessary? Well, the text is actually very explicit about this, stating, God desires to move, but he looks for those who will respond. This is a super fascinating theological premise that underpins the entire framework of the book. It suggests that while divine intention is always present and ready to go, human willingness is actually the necessary trigger. Basically, the intercessor is responding to an open invitation to participate in shaping nations. Which brings us to Section 3, power and participation. Let's look at this collaborative dynamic. To really understand how this book works, we have to look at how it separates the duties. The framework makes a really sharp distinction, making sure the reader knows that humans are not the ones actually answering the prayers. God's role is possessing the ultimate power to save, heal, restore, and transform. The human job, the intercessor's role, is purely participation through alignment. It's about praying in alignment with God's will, speaking his word, and, like we talked about, standing in that gap. So essentially, the human provides the alignment, and the divine provides the ultimate power to actually enact the change. It is a highly structured, very collaborative partnership. All right, Section 4, the 31-day journey, the actual guided roadmap. So, how do you actually do this? How does the author guide a reader through this incredibly heavy, collaborative process over the course of a single month without them getting totally overwhelmed? Well, she structures the emotional and spiritual arc of the book in a very deliberate 3-step progression. Step 1 is moving from awareness to awakening. You have to first become aware of that spiritual reality before you can actually spiritually wake up to it. Step 2 is moving from awakening to transformation. Once you're awake, you have to undergo deep internal change. And finally, step 3 is moving from transformation to impact. Notice the flow here. It's really clever. It moves purposefully from the internal, waking up the individual, all the way outward to the external, impacting the world. And to help you accomplish this massive progression, Jonah equips you with specific daily tools. Every single day's entry gives you structured prayer points, scripture-based reflections, and targeted activations. The real genius of this setup is the clarity it provides. The framework takes these massive, frankly daunting global concepts, like trying to pray for entire economies or governments, and distills them down into highly structured, actionable daily steps. That way the reader never feels lost in the sheer magnitude of the task. You can actually see this internal to external shift just by glancing at the book's table of contents. Early on, the days focus super heavily on getting your own spiritual house in order. Take day 2, which focuses on stillness and awareness of God, or day 4, which is about separation from sin. It's all about building that necessary foundation. But fast forward to day 15, and the focus pushes outward to praying for righteous leadership. And by day 28, you're at the macro level, interceding for complete national transformation. The very structure of the book totally mirrors that journey from personal alignment straight to global impact. Finally, Section 5, Beyond the Written Words. What is the ultimate goal here? So, what exactly is the author's endgame for you once you close the book on day 31? Jonah is super intentional about the book's long-term purpose. She writes, "These words are not the limit of your prayer, they are the beginning." See, this 31-day framework isn't designed to be some temporary one-and-done checklist that you just finish and forget about. Instead, these structured points and daily activations are meant to be a foundational catalyst. The goal is literally to train the reader in an entirely new way of seeing and interacting with world events. Once you put the book down, you're supposed to look at a breaking news headline not just as a random political event, but as an immediate prompt for spiritual action, building this continuous, ongoing practice of intercession into your everyday life. So let's do a quick recap of what we've unpacked today. We explored the author's concept of an unseen spiritual realm that's actively driving world events. We looked at the call to take up a real burden, the structured partnership between divine power and human alignment, and that highly deliberate, month-long roadmap designed to get you there. The framework Olivia Jonah lays out is highly structured, deeply intentional, and honestly, it asks for a profound level of commitment to view global headlines in a completely different way. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to consider, directly echoing the author's core challenge to her readers. After seeing how this entire architecture of prayer is built, are you ready to stand in the gap,